Okay, awesome. I'll just give, I'll say a little bit about Dylan, but I'm sure he can introduce himself and give more detail in a second. But just for you guys as a quick 2 sentence thing, he's the CEO and co-founder of Guava Health, a personal health tracker to keep health information in one place, tracks everything from medical records, lab tests, fitness devices, and sort of integrates it all in one. Dylan's kind of some like a math, comp sci sort of education background. Is an engineer sort of by training. And if fun fact, if you didn't know, he's also the co-founded ImageFlip, which is like if any of you guys are really into memes, that was an awesome website, and you guys can still use that now. But I'll let maybe Dylan take it away by first telling us maybe a bit about yourself in more detail, and maybe just about your whole career journey as a to start with for the chat.
Sure. You guys hear me all right? Make sure my microphone is on and everything. Cool. All right, career journey. So yeah, very much a technical engineer, science. I've done a handful of science. So started actually at a small liberal arts college. They didn't have an engineering department, so I did math, physics, and astronomy there, or I guess astrophysics. Then moved to Washington University in St. Louis, did computer science there. Only did 1 year of computer science though, so I have like 4 years of science and engineering background, but did not actually get the degree. It was supposed to be a 2-degree thing over 5 years. You guys have heard of those 3-2 programs? Ended up just going straight into industry though. I wanted to go straight into building things for the world that last. So that's kind of what I'm interested in. Worked in kind of a knowledge engineering, building personal assistant technology space for a while. So it's a company called Graphic. We ended up getting the team that my co-founder Alex and I spun out. We spun out a team to do personal assistant question answering on top of our knowledge base. That ended up getting us acquired by Amazon. That was in 2018 or something. So it wasn't a huge acquisition or anything, but it was somewhat successful. Made a little bit of money from that, but mainly the interesting experience. We got to talk to all the major Apple, Google, Samsung, Microsoft. Everyone had their personal assistants, so they're interested in our tech at the very least, or buying it so that each other can have it. This is kind of a fun thing. But during that process, we worked a lot on various types of AI. So just large big data systems, statistical methods, all the semantic natural language processing technology. Not generative AI. It was not doing very much in 2018. So our tech at Alexa ended up being used by, I think, 90% of the knowledge questions that you would have asked from Alexa. So that was the stuff that we built. I think it's still using some of it today, which it probably should not, because it's definitely not as good as generative AI can be. Sad we missed that by just a couple of years. It would have been fun to build all that. Anyway, Alex and I only stayed at Amazon for 1 year for me and 3 years for him. We want to do something really, really big as our next gig. Pretty much my entire life, I've been extremely interested in just the hard physical world, from physics all the way through biology, and very interested in peak longevity, like how far can we push human technology and engineering to essentially do what we want with the universe. And obviously one of the most fascinating things there is, can we fundamentally change what our biology has been for the last 200,000 years, when it's human genetics or whatever. So that's very, very interesting. Unfortunately, it's not a business right now, or at least I would say it's not a business where you can directly sell that long-term goal, because we're just simply not there yet. It's a very hard problem. I'm sure, coming from longevity bio, a lot of you listen to podcasts and things from I don't know, Huberman or Peter Attia or David Sinclair. So there's little interesting little things going on, but they're just kind of very small snippets of what's ultimately possible and what we'll actually have to do from an engineering standpoint to engineer ourselves into a longer life. So cool stuff going on. But from the Guava perspective, what we're trying to do is build the kind of the boring systems approach. If you're going to methodically from the ground up over the very long term build something that can optimally help with human health. Like, how do you do that? It's a lot of boring stuff. Like right now, you just have a lot of lab results, a lot of medical records. There are a lot of different ways you can get, device data about yourself. A lot of those signals can help you understand, like, why are you getting these symptoms? Why do you have a slightly higher chance of death at this point, or in this city with these, this type of water, or with, sorry, I have the windows open. Or this type of air pollution is a big thing. So a lot of different signals. You can't affect peak longevity very much, obviously, but you can certainly affect, not dying early from certain things, or living a more healthy life. Like health span has become a term now. That's kind of the journey Guava's on. I could probably go for a long time about what Guava's doing right now, but essentially it's a personal health tracker. We've built the information layer to connect all your medical records. We sync with providers in the US automatically, or you can upload PDFs or CCDA documents from any medical system in the world. Generative AI is very convenient for extracting from any language. So like, hundreds of languages are technically supported if you upload a PDF, and we'll extract those lab results into your Guava profile so you can see the chart over time. We also have a full suite of general logging capabilities, which is kind of a competitor to a lot of the apps you'll find in the App Store, like medication trackers, symptom trackers, bowel movement, pee trackers, food trackers like MyFitnessPal. So a lot of that is possible in Guava. Maybe I should stop and let you guys go to some more targeted.
Don't worry, Dylan. We're definitely going to be asking a lot more about Guava. But before we jump into that specifically, I wanted to ask, when did your interest in the health sector really begin? And like, I guess, what was the inspiration behind developing Guava?
Yeah. A lot of people in the health space they'll usually have a very personal story that's maybe more personal than ours. But for Alex and me, health is very close to us. It's very important to us personally. I wouldn't say there's like, one major disease that I'm suffering from and that's what inspired it. It's not that type of thing. But it's very important to me. It's very important to my family members. Every family member has some sort of thing that's not being taken care of right. Like there are just so many areas for improvement across all of health. So those things are very, very important. That's just from a selfish point of view. Like if we're going to build something and make an impact in the world, it helps to do something that's going to improve our own lives and our families' lives. From the business standpoint, it's $5 trillion in the United States. It's the biggest business in the world, especially if we begin to solve some things that haven't been solved before. It's a very interesting long-term business proposition.
And I guess the follow up on Sufil's question, I guess like not everybody in longevity comes from a health background to begin with. I know we just talked about your background. You weren't like a health biology major. So I'm curious, in the development of Guava, was there any challenges in that sense, or how did you manage to tackle that given your background wasn't in that field of health tech longevity to really start with?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So from the, let's say like the bachelor's program, from that type of knowledge, I certainly have, I would say, a superset of like the initial 4-year knowledge, chemistry, biology, physics, from like a typical doctor path. So what I and Alex are missing in particular would be the going through the postgraduate programs, and ultimately the doctorate program, and residency and all that. So that's definitely missing from our experience. So what we're bringing is primarily software engineering, AI data, and large consumer products. So we've worked on and scaled a couple products to like hundreds of millions of people around the world, and that's probably, and personally I think that's one of the things that's needed in healthcare, because not as much of that type of thought is brought into it. And naturally, I'm biased because that's the type of thing that I think about. But that's where we're coming from, and that's what we're trying to bring to the health world. We do have how we're getting our healthcare experience and expertise. Is our chief medical officer is also the chief medical officer at a hospital in Vermont. Close connection to us. Kat McGraw, she's on our about page and everything. So she helps us with all the are you saying things that are not going to fit with how a doctor needs to interpret it, or that could be interpreted as risky, things like that, and just giving us the expertise we need from the healthcare integration side.
As a very quick follow-up to that, you mentioned you have that undergrad level of, I guess, biology slash like health science knowledge. Where did you get it from? Like, I know your master's degree and your bachelor's degree was definitely not in that. So was it the internet? Did you just like search through the
Oh,
web?
no,
How
no,
did you?
no. So in my small liberal arts program, I mean I love science, so I just tried to take as broad of a, it was closest to physics, but there were multiple chemistry classes. I can't remember how much biology I had, honestly, but definitely a solid amount of chemistry, a lot of physics. I'd honestly have to go back and look at what they were, but to your point, in addition to that, a huge amount, just to be blatantly obvious, I've learned way more outside of school, like 10, 100 times more useful information outside of school than inside of school. The way, more opinions for me. The way inside of the school learning tends to work is, book learning, right? So, and I haven't been in the system recently, and so it's probably evolving a lot. But a lot of the book learning is more like, here are a whole bunch of methods for doing science that has been done in the past for particular use cases. In reality, 94% of those or something are not relevant to what you're going to do in the future, and they don't actually help you, cure some of a disease, for instance. So a lot of the learning I've done has been, finding something that is, written or created, or like a podcast could be a good example, or YouTube videos or other like learning. I've done, some online things, but like what I find important is finding someone who has done something exceptional in the field and realize things a little more than just maybe a plain introduction to a course. So someone who has some unique bits of knowledge that I can like use to, inform my neural network of how to build things and craft them in the future. So I've done a lot of that outside of just the school system.
That's very cool. I will agree. I think some of my best memories in terms of biology did not come from reading slides or textbooks. So I can completely understand that view. And kind of shifting, I guess, back to this idea of being Guava Health as a product. Obviously, there's a lot of health and wellness products out there, calorie trackers, fitness trackers, health trackers. What would you describe Guava Health as in terms of that product space? Like, is there a specific like genre you guys follow? Is it a health tech app, a personalized medicine app?
That's a really good question. We struggle with that. It's part of the problem with trying to do something a little more innovative is you have to invent what that is if you expect it to be like a new term or a new style of just thing that is needed in the world. Like it doesn't yet have, like the device tracker, or like when you say fitness tracker, it generally means one of these. So that's kind of an established field right now. If you're trying to go more innovative, you have to like invent what that is. So what we've kind of come up with so far, which is not very good. It's not the perfect thing. Just our title in the App Store is Guava Health Tracker, like Guava : Health Tracker, which kind of implies a fitness tracker, which is not quite right. That's the best we've done so far. What we ultimately want to be is a health guardian that does essentially 90% of what you need related to your health in one place. Health guardian isn't a term that's taken off. I don't know if that's the term or not, but something like that.
Okay, you made a new term, so maybe other people should be using that one as well. I guess I'm curious though, because I know Guava is. I guess you guys are in 3 years, maybe the anniversary, possibly recently.
About
I'm
3 years.
curious. 3 years, okay, congrats. I was curious about the bottlenecks, because right now we have in our LongX Explore program, we have some of our fellows sort of starting their own ideas, and I think a lot of us, when we want to make like a big project, a lot of it comes down to like, well, can we get information and data for it? And I think in our conversation, Dylan, a few months ago, I remember asking like, oh, like, was it hard to get like electronic health record data? Like that was the first thing that came to mind. I'm not sure how big of a challenge that was, but what were the bottlenecks at different stages in the process of developing Guava Health? And are there things that maybe wouldn't think of that you could share with us?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So I guess good news if you're trying to do something in the US with health records, the laws recently came out in 2021 and 22 at the end of each of those years, requiring all providers to give third-party app access to patient data if the patient says, yes, please, send my data to this provider. So that basically means that Guava can connect and import records from any provider in the US, as long as the patient is the one controlling it. So they go through, they type in their username, password, say, yes, please sync my data to Guava. So if you're doing something in that space, you can create those integrations and do something cool with health data, medical data in your app. So that is not a bottleneck in the US, but it's definitely a bottleneck internationally. We definitely hit some walls with that. We had to actually remove some of the connect provider language from our app because people in Europe and elsewhere were like, what is this? I can't even use it. The app is totally so it's partially a marketing thing for us, though. We just changed our like marketing materials to not emphasize it as much because we have built tools that are pretty helpful internationally, particularly like the PDF uploading experience, because you can import records from anywhere using that. Let me think about some other bottlenecks, though. Bottlenecks when building in the healthcare industry. So the industry itself is, I would say, maybe, I don't know if bottleneck is the right term, but a massive hindrance to progress in general. If you have to work with insurance or providers, anywhere that's like directly connected to the payment system. In the US, there's the three-way payer provider patient system, which makes things a mess. Some other countries have that. But if you have to deal directly with the system, it slows everything down. So my personal opinion, this won't work for all companies, but my personal opinion is it's useful to find somewhere where you can like scale infinitely, where you can just go as fast as you are capable of doing as a team. And so that you can just like pure innovation, go, 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 go. And you don't have to wait on laws. You don't have to wait on permission from providers or governments. You don't have to like convince hospitals to adopt your product. So being in consumer land, where we are, is one way of doing that. We can just constantly innovate and consumers either use it or they don't. We just have to be transparent about what we're giving to them in the app. And it's hard. It's hard to convince consumers that something is worthwhile. They should like spend their time. And even like $6 is like, it's a harder thing for consumers, especially in the health space, to like want to pay for that. The way a lot of longevity companies do it, right, is they target only maybe 5% of the market, more either wealthy executives or just people who are, doing well and interested in longevity. And so people who can afford like $100 a month or, the $400 lab test thing from Inside Tracker. But a lot of people we work with, we're empowering people with chronic illnesses. They're usually like people with extreme chronic illness are usually out of a job. Like they don't have time and their life is totally overwhelmed. So they can't do that. So $6 a month fits that much more. We can scale doing that, but it's harder. You need a lot more people paying $6 a month. And so, but it's very convenient from being able to move quickly. And so I think that's a leg up we have on a lot of our competitors who are trying to sell one very specific, potentially helpful tool, but one very specific thing just to a certain type of hospital or something like that, or usually for just a certain disease. Because it's just such a narrow market. You might even make $1 billion company doing that, but then you'll be capped out and you haven't impacted the world very much. And you definitely haven't affected peak longevity if you're just targeting, one of the big diseases like diabetes or, heart attacks or something like that. Those are generally poor health diseases rather than peak longevity.
Do you want to ask the next one?
Yeah, of course. So I guess this is kind of a question. You mentioned longevity, and obviously, here at LongX, that's one of the things we focus on. In terms of the longevity sector itself, like how do you imagine Guava Health is going to impact it? I mean, obviously, there's multiple ways people look at it. There's like, extending health span, lifespan. Where does Guava Health fall?
So the people we are working with most today are chronically ill people, like I mentioned. So we're definitely affecting the health span for some people. We empower people to actually figure out what's going on with their symptoms more quickly, help make sure that providers have all the information they need to like diagnose someone. And then maybe there's an easy diet change or an easy medication they can go on that makes their life, 80% better. So health span is primarily what we're working on today. Lifespan, is very hard, like you mentioned, or at least the peak lifespan is extremely hard. Regular old lifespan, we have a longevity score right now, preventive health score. That's I don't know if you guys saw that anywhere and you're checking out the website or the app, but the pretty little circle thing with the dots going around. That's we call it the Guava score, but it's essentially a longevity score. All the things in there will help you have a longer, I don't know, what do you call that? Just like default lifespan, not a higher peak lifespan generally, or statistically across the whole population, but a better lifespan in general. So it'll help with all of the known issues we have, like heart disease, diet. It's all the standard stuff. And a few extra things like radon, for instance, is something that most people don't ever think about unless you're buying a home. But like radon is something that can kill you from lung disease. It's the next highest thing after smoking for lung cancer. And it's just like kind of out of nowhere. So we want to add more stuff to that over time. So in terms of impacting the longevity space, we'll slowly incrementally add more there. It will be probably a while. Like I said, we're doing all the boring stuff, just kind of like the plumbing in the base level to try to, keep the base level a little bit higher and higher, but like more slowly. Eventually, long term, we'll start to get into the peak longevity stuff. So when some of these treatments start to be more, let's say, more sellable, so it's very clear it extends for a certain type of person this amount of lifespan, and there's like numbers and demographics we can tie to that, we'll integrate that with the app. So we'll say, based on your genetics, based on your health history, this is like the optimal treatment for you to get, which will extend your lifespan by this much. And we'll organize that stuff and we'll help people find the right treatments. We do that a little bit right now for, the standard lab tests and things. But yeah, that's how I see it working for longer term longevity. And, if we do become successful and somehow, so we make a $10 billion business, then it could get interesting to actually put money into inventing some of those things. Although the way longevity works, at least I think the consensus in the industry is that there's at least 9 major subsets of like types of biological processes that we need to solve in order to get rid of death. Until that changes, it's going to take a lot of different organizations, a lot of different companies, a lot of different researchers in totally different ways to improve lifespan. And so if we're going to make a large impact on it ourselves, probably organizing that and helping people to understand and utilize it as it comes out might be our best bet for Guava. But there could be a research arm in the future as well.
Oh, that answered the question perfectly. I would maybe even describe it as like you guys are currently maximizing longevity or maximizing lifespan within people, almost removing the inefficiencies. But that's very cool. And I guess as a follow-up, the longevity field, especially the product space in the longevity field, can be quite dicey, and that's one of the things we try to teach our fellows here. To be wary of what it is that's being sold in the current space. There's like red light therapies, certain things that aren't exactly backed up by science that much. So are there any aspects, I guess, of the aging biology or longevity field that you personally are averse to, or things that you would prefer not to associate with Guava Health? Is there anything about the longevity field you don't like, essentially?
That's a funny question. So yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. I mean, there's been stuff like that for, 20,000 years. Maybe longer, as long as we've been able to communicate. Someone's been trying to sell the fountain of youth to someone else. Yeah, so I mean, I guess I don't have any, like if you brought up some things, I'd probably be able to, give a strong opinion on them. But in general, just from a personal standpoint, you need to use as much objective data as you can, which is extremely lacking in the healthcare world, even for like the most used biggest medications and supplements. If you look at the data in the clinical trial yourself, it's not satisfying. It's like they did a trial on 4,200 people that didn't account for your demographic maybe, and that didn't control for the things that you care about, and that's what's pushing the drug across the entire world. It's not enough. That's one of the other things that I'm very excited about doing in the longer term with Guava. When we start to have 1 million, 5 million, 10 million users, that's a lot of data that each person can use collectively to help each other, right? So if in the data we see that this treatment is being used by a huge number of people and it correlates, statistically correlates. So like an observational study, like a real world data observational study. If it correlates with something getting better, something getting worse, we can show that in the app. Like of the 90,000 people in your demographic, this treatment was correlated with a worse outcome. So you should ask your doctor about it, that type of thing. And that'll be extremely powerful when we get more users. We're too small right now to make crazy impact with that. We have around 50,000 users. It gets very interesting in the future though, and that can help a little bit probably with some of the, because it's not a controlled clinical trial, but I think it has large potential to help with figuring out which things are actually working, which things are not.
And as a very quick follow-up to that, I guess the users of Guava Health, is there a specific persona? Like what type of users are using it today? Is it the biohackers, is general health conscious individuals? Like, is there a persona you think makes up the majority or just in general?
Yeah, definitely a mix. But the majority, kind of like I mentioned, our focus is on chronically ill. It's younger people who have some sort of unsolved chronic illness. And as with probably most health products, it tends a lot toward female. Yeah, they tend to be a caretaker of the humans in the home more often, and also just more health things to think about. Yeah, so that's where it skews now. Younger people, just because they're more tech savvy, it's they're just using more apps by default, and so a lot of the people we work with are like, oh, I was using 9 apps to try to track my health before, and I'm like suffering every day, and it didn't really work very well. And then I found Guava, and oh my god, I can get rid of all of them, that type of thing. So we had quite a number of people who comment something like that. But then there's, if I'm just pulling numbers out of thin air, it's probably like, I don't know, 60% chronic illness, unsolved chronic illness, and then maybe 10 to 20% some like just the like the head of household, basically someone who's taking care of their kids, taking care of themselves, taking care of their aging parents, and then maybe a 10 to 20% biohacker, longevity person, self-quantifier, that type of, that's rough estimate, I guess.
I'm going to ask maybe one more, and then I want to open the floor up to everyone else here because I realize like Asuf and I could probably ask like all day, and we already spent 30 minutes. So maybe I'll ask just one more about the data in terms of like, I think it's really amazing that they have all these associations between things that people wouldn't typically consider. Like I think on the website, for example, you have like air pressure, gluten, heart rate variability. Like it's not something you might commonly see associations of. I imagine when you first started, you probably had some idea of what type of data you want. And then maybe as you sort of got farther, you got feedback from maybe the community and also doing more research. I'm curious if there's certain types of data maybe you're not able to get that you would like to, or if there's certain types of data you're planning to try to integrate in the future. If we're out to that, know a sneak peek, but I'm not sure how much you can tell us so far.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge amount of data, like absolutely tremendous amount of data that would be amazingly useful to be able to just run through an automated model and like tell you what's happening. So yes, it's going to be a constant incremental battle. We're going to try to integrate new devices as they come out. We're going to add our own innovations to try to get data more easily. Logging is very just annoying, like especially if you have a chronic illness, you don't want to like open an app and like tap all day long. So we're trying to remove that as much as we can. We actually just launched a product that's in beta right now called Guava Tags. It's a fancy little NFC sticker. You can put it on like your coffee machine to log your coffee in the morning. You can put it on your medication bottle and just like tap your phone on it, and it just like check mark, kind of like when you tap to pay. So remove some of the headache of having to like go in the app and fiddle around to log things. But yeah, in terms of more data, there's a crazy amount of additional data. We're just starting to get into some of the more interesting, like actual, biology, like what's going on inside your cells. It's very minimal from a continuous basis right now. Most of the way you get lab results, it's like really cool data when it goes through like a high quality lab to get the data. But like you get like once every 3 months. Like you're not gonna figure out as easily or hardly at all, like is something I'm doing with like travel. I always travel to this city that has bad air or something, or like a diet change or something like that that's on like the daily level. Like it's gonna be very hard to tell unless you're monitoring those on a more continuous basis. So there's a huge amount of work to be done on just like what are all the nutrients flowing through your bloodstream, what's going on in your cells. One thing I often bring up to people is that I try to imagine what would an alien civilization, like say there's like some super advanced alien civilization, they come in and look at us and they're like, oh, what, you're doing that? Why would you be doing that? Presumably they'd have some sort of they'd be able to see with whatever instruments, like some scanning device or whatever, like obviously what's going on with their health. Like, what would they say? They'd be like, oh, that's so silly, you're thinking about it that way. Obviously this person is suffering from blah, 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 because we can see it using, like, how do they do that? So there's a huge amount of potential, like that we haven't even remotely hit the laws of the limit of the laws of physics for analyzing our own biology. So a lot of interesting instruments will come out, and we definitely want to integrate with them.
Okay, Marvin may have lied. We have one final question before we open up the floor, but it does pertain to the students here. So for students and budding professionals entering the field, if they want to work on something similar to Guava Health or work in the digital health space, what skills are needed right now and what roles are needed currently or even in the near future?
So I'm probably extremely biased on this question as well. I'm very much a hard science and engineering person. There's no way around being extremely or having an extreme amount of power if you're able to wield software. So if you understand the technical details to be able to change what's going on with whatever the current state of the art in AI and software is and hardware, you'll be able to move very quickly in the world and get a lot of useful things done. So I would even go as far as saying, like, every single person who's trying to make impact in the world should understand software to some extent, at the very least, from just kind of a practical high level, so you understand like the moving parts, so that you're more able to use tools like GPT or tools that automate some of the programming stuff. There are a lot more like self-serve tools for automating software today, but you do see an obvious line where the non-technical people hit a wall with that, and their product stops, or you don't get to the innovation you need. Yeah, so it's very, very important to have some sort of software skill.
Okay, great. And now for the rest of the fellows, if you guys have a question, raise your hand or just unmute yourself and ask away. There's nothing off the table. As I mentioned, oh, Elena's already ready to go. Go ahead, Elena.
Oh, I think you're.
Yeah, Elena, we're having a little issue with your audio here. It's just cutting out. Maybe type it in the chat and we can read it out for you. Yeah, in the meantime, Mohammed, go ahead, and then we'll get back to Elena's question.
Hi, Dylan. This is a great talk, and I have two questions for you so far. So the first one is, how could we gain access to the patient data? Is that like accessible on a database like NCBI, or do we have to go to healthcare providers individually as an entity or something?
Are you talking about the US healthcare provider system?
Yeah.
So you would implement an FHIR API. You have to implement code that will talk to an OAuth. Generally, I think they're always OAuth 2.0 servers. It's a very standardized thing. You can probably even not have to do that with software, use some system to do that. And then you just need to be able to hit simple REST API endpoints that are in FHIR format. And you'll basically pull the JSON back and do whatever you want with it. In terms of making it work and getting permission, each EHR vendor has a different process. So the biggest one, MyChart, Epic MyChart, their APIs work very, very well. There is some, contention with their political opinions on whether the laws should even be passed in the first place. But once they were passed, they did a very, very good job of implementing the APIs, giving access. So if you're going to integrate, that's the first place you'd integrate with. They're like the majority of probably US healthcare and hospital data. Yeah, you just go to, I think it's like open.epic.com documentation. You have to submit for approval, but they're, they can't deny you without reasonable reason, I guess. Like there's some legal requirements, but basically, if you're not doing something bad with the data, then like they have to give your app access. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. And the second one is, you have a lot of data, right? And the best part is that you're tracking people over the course of their lives, which is basically a perfect longitudinal study. So this might be proprietary, so you don't really have to answer this, but are you, sort of coming up with predictive models for diagnosis or treatment enhancement or something like that with that data?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about with the future. It's much more interesting when we have, a million or more
Yeah.
patients with different data, just because the diversity becomes very, very hard to tackle very quickly. Only a certain percentage of people have Apple Health Watch data, or only a certain percentage are from this part of the world. Only a certain percentage are, there are a whole bunch of different like cuts of the demographics and like the technology of the data. So you need a lot of people to start being able to get a consistent study with complete data for the full 4 years or whatever period you're doing. But yeah, no, we're absolutely planning to do help with symptoms, diagnosis, medications, anything we can. We're not doing like diagnosis right now. That's kind of a tricky beast to get into. But there will be something related to that increasing as time goes on.
That sounds really exciting. Thank you so much.
While we're waiting for Elena's question, anyone else? Any other question?
Oh, Vlada has her hand raised. Yeah, Vlada, why don't you go next?
Thanks. Hi, Dylan. Thanks a lot for the presentation. Awesome. I actually have two curiosity questions. First one is, how was the process of forming the core team? So you mentioned that one of your partners is the person you know for a long time, but how challenging it was, or how was the process of finding the chief medical officer, and how many people you need to do such kind of thing usually?
Yeah. We only have 6 full-time people and then 5 to 10 contractors right now. So we're pretty small still. It was, so I don't want to give you the wrong direction on this. It was very easy for us because we just did people we knew. So Avadi is a senior engineer. We knew him for 10 years. Isabel worked also at Amazon, which is the company we all worked at for a while. Isabel's parents' friend was Kat, the chief medical officer. And then, we brought a couple other friends in. So, I mean, that's if you know people who are doing cool things in health, you can move very quickly with a smaller team. But other than that, hiring out of a university campus can be very quick and high throughput if you have the type of role that fits that. So certain roles can be very good with you just need a raw brain power of someone who's interested in doing cool stuff. But then there are some roles where like you definitely need 5 to 10 years of like honing and wisdom in a certain area. So like maybe like your lead designer or something, like they need to have tested a whole lot of different products to have a good intuition for like how to build user interfaces, for example. You're not going to quite get that just out of college. But does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, sure. So basically, it's friends of the friends mostly. It's very nice. I was also curious which percentage of the functionality you had to basically limit when going to Europe. Is it like 100% in US and 10% in Europe, or 50-50? What is the rate?
So yeah, good question. So we've built Guava from the ground up to be just a worldwide, like it's, I would say aspirationally, we're building it for humanity. We're not building it for any particular country or, type of person. In reality, we are like based in the US. And so there's a lot of kind of inherent biases from that. The main thing that's different though is just the connection with providers, because those laws exist in the US that mean every provider has to transfer data. But it's more of like a special feature. A lot of the stuff that people come to Guava for now are the app tracking functionality. So just the ability to log all sorts of things, import things from all their devices and see insights. So we give automated insights and little notifications that say, oh, your heart rate went up 10% after doing this activity or something. So a lot of people use this for that. And then of course, like I was mentioning, if you upload PDFs or just images of a printed thing, that works anywhere in the world. So maybe 80-90% worldwide, and In terms of other languages, if you want to use the app in other languages, we technically support, I think, about 20 right now, but it's GPT quality. It's not native quality, so we'll improve that over time. But if you know English, then you should have a pretty solid experience in most countries, I think.
Thanks.
All right, and very quickly for the recording, I'll read out Elena's question. Describing the patient's profile, you have mentioned that your customers usually are young people. So I wanted to ask you whether the majority of these users have psychological conditions like depression or maybe ADHD that make them use such health trackers to monitor the mood changes of their condition. In this way, what kind of results do they receive from Guava? And how does your company help such customers monitor their conditions?
Yeah, good question. Sadly, some of those things have drastically increased over the past few years, particularly with the younger generations. So the ways that Guava helps with that, we don't have like a, I don't know, mental health section of the app, but we allow you to track mood, energy, the symptoms, of course, and we'll do automatic insights. So that's how a lot of people use it. You can also journal, but tracking your mood over time, seeing which things, which foods, which supplements end up helping, which medications end up helping. What else on mental health? Another thing that, I mean, it's a generic thing, but that a number of people have found useful just from user feedback is our visit prep tool. If you're having, especially like, fatigue or brain fog or having issues being heard at the doctor's office, it can help to have an organized visit prep ahead of time. So we let you compile which information and which questions you have, put that into, it's a PDF document, but you can print it and just like give it to your doctor. And then, it's probably only 15 minutes anyway, at least if it's like US style where doctor has a very small amount of time. But you just print them the 2 pages and give it to them. And then like they have to look at it. And it's much better than trying to remember all the things and go through them, because usually especially if it looks like it's data from a system, for better or worse, doctors tend to respect that more. And so they'll look at it and be like, oh, this is your lab results over time. Oh, this was your logged something over time. And so we've gotten good feedback that it makes people heard and the things that they need addressed, and so more likely to get closer to the treatment or the solution that you're looking for.
That's amazing. Okay, so we'll do one more question and then we'll wrap up. Does anyone have any final questions? Otherwise, I have one locked and loaded. Once again, anything, if you want to, as I mentioned with Courtney's Fireside, if you want to ask Dylan about his favorite ice cream flavor, feel free to do so. Anything is on the table. Alrighty, this is the final warning. I'll ask myself now. So Dylan, throughout the entire conversation we've had, you mentioned a lot about how, I guess, the users bring information into Guava. Is there like any aspect of Guava where you might be sending users out to go get, for example, like a lab requisition and go get a blood test and bring the data in? Like, is there any, I guess, like outward motion, similar to like other companies like TrueAge does with their testing?
Good question. It's part of our long-term general mission. Like it fits in the mission of helping people to understand and improve their health in whatever way is best at a given time. We previously had a little link out to buy lab tests in the US, but it was only like some parts of the US, and it wasn't the nicest. Anyway, it wasn't the nicest product, and so we rolled that back for a few different reasons. It's a little more difficult when you're going into the physical world because it differs much more drastically from country to country. But it's definitely something we care about and we'll add more features on in the future, both connecting to the medical system for getting treatment, seeing doctors, maybe virtually. That's an easier thing to do, just online from anywhere in the world, to getting medications in the cheapest location near you, to finding scans, or genetic testing, even lab tests. So it's all things we're interested in, but it takes a little more effort and scale to get those working for everyone. So we haven't pushed too hard yet.
Okay, and we have one final question from Elena. So once again, I lied. But what is Guava's next step? What innovations or maybe partnerships with clinics or other healthcare companies do you plan to implement to improve the app's work or expand its work to a bigger audience?
So we definitely plan to expand further outside of just chronic illness. We're actually focused on a few chronic illnesses now that Guava does particularly well with. So we're expanding that to more chronic illnesses, and eventually we'll go more to the general population. That'll take a lot more automation and get harder though, harder as we scale. What else? Big innovation plan. Honestly, the biggest thing that I think is super, super important, I mentioned this earlier, we're about to do a big push on AI and insights, because our insights product it's okay. You might be able to claim it's like the best that's available for just finding insights from your health data, but there's a lot of noise. You see a lot of correlations for a lot of things. So we want to spend some time rethinking what is a more optimal, useful way to get insights about your health. Think about that from the ground up, and there will probably be some revamped version of that. Because ultimately that's one of the most important things, is how, like, a lot of people don't want to, especially if you're healthy, you don't want to think about your health. You're like, everyone wants to be healthier. They're like, if they can, just press a button and magically be healthier, they'll do it. But it's generally only people with chronic illness or an extreme desire to, track things that will actually go through the effort of doing a whole bunch of logging and connecting all sorts of things. So we want to think about the experience that will be as tiny amount of time investment, and just give you the little sliver of like super important information that's going to change your life. Maybe it's only once every 2 weeks, but we want to think about that experience more, and hopefully deliver something really cool in the next few months.
Okay, and I guess, sorry, I guess you for a lot too. The last question really would be, if the students, let's say, do have the next big innovation, or maybe want to ask you some more career advice, is there a place they can reach you to maybe ask? Is there an email, or go to the website? What would you recommend?
Yeah, we're small enough right now, fortunately, that we still read every email that comes to hello@guavahealth.com. So you can also just email me at dylan@guavahealth.com if you have direct questions. Yeah, we're very on top of user feedback. It's very important to us, like how real people in the real world are getting use out of our product, because that's what we're trying to impact. So we pay very close attention to every single email and feedback that comes in.
Okay, great. So thank you so much, Dylan. Round of applause for you. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with everyone here. And I'll stop the recording right here.